So I found this place here where I've sat down, and it's just a few meters away from the path, and I've made sure that I'm not trampling down any flowers. So maybe you can see this here in the back. There is an abundance of these really beautiful cowslip flowers, and then you might see these purple dots, and these are all orchids. So they're all over this meadow here. And I hope my voice is loud enough. I'm a bit self-conscious because there's a hiking path nearby, and I don't want to be too suspicious. So the great thing about this place is that there's this really popular hiking path just over there, maybe 100 meters. I've sat down here in this this dead end of the path, or of a parallel path, and no one is really coming by. No one is really, they're all over on that other path. So this may be a tip for you if you're trying to sketch outside and you're still a bit self-conscious, and I know I often am, then just maybe look for a place that's not really in the middle of things, where you know a lot of people will walk by and maybe take a look on your work. And so this is really helpful for me, and I found this place with a really lot of nice orchids, and I'm going to try and sketch one now and then see where my hike will lead me. So the only thing that I don't really like here, but that's nothing that I can change, is that there's the road nearby. So I hope there won't be too much noise from the road in these recordings, but this is unfortunately something that I can't change. But it's really nice. There are many spring flowers here, as you can see, and a lot of birds. So I hope this will be enjoyable. So it's one that's not fully open yet. So down here there are a few flower heads that are open, and up here it's still closed. And I think this is actually a good one to sketch, because all of these parts up here will be quicker to sketch. So let's see what I've got. It's not very likely that I will finish this here in the field, because it's just the change of the wind and the sun. It's not very comfortable. I've drawn another one up here, and then I've also done some color tests so that I can really get the colors right, even when my photographs maybe don't match the colors that I can see on the plant. So I've decided to get out my watercolors after all, and add a little bit of color here and there. So I guess I'll just see what happens, and if the weather is holding. Right now the sun is out again, but I'm sitting in a shady spot, so that should not be too much of a problem. And I guess I'll show you my setup, my field sketching setup. So here's my finished sketch. Still a bit rough, but I think it will do. And I'm just sitting on the ground here, and here you can see my watercolors. And for this occasion I just brought this water brush, but without any water in it. I keep my water in here because I don't really like this effect of always having water on the brush. So I'd rather have a dry brush and then really have a little bit more control over the brush. Okay, I already have an idea about what colors I need to mix, so let's see how this will go. So whenever you find you've put too much color onto your palette, and when you're sketching outside, then what I do is I simply put it into my painting rack, because water is usually something that I don't have a lot of. So I've brought a few more water containers like this, but it gets muddy really quickly, and I like to keep my water as clear as I can. So what I do instead is just I put it on the rag. . And this particular species is not always looking the same in its color, so this is a really dark one. I've seen other specimens today that were rather pink, changing more into the magenta. So that's often the case with these kind of orchids. So let me show you where we are. I've added most of the red and purple colors now. So this is how it looks now. I've actually brought a few small colored pencil stubs with me, and they don't really have the right colors, but so when they're actually sharpened, then they make really nice details. And I only have this one green, so I really need new colored pencil stubs, but I've added a few more lines to my leaves here. And I think I'm going to leave it at that. It's a bit of a shame that you can't really get these really intense purples right. So when I look at my colors and when I look at the plant, you can see there's sort of a difference, but this is one difficulty about watercolors, is that the really intense purples are not very light fast. So what I could do is bring a very fluorescent purple and paint with that would match the colors, but then it would fade very badly in a few months or even weeks. So yeah, I think I will leave it at that for now. And maybe look for another spot, maybe do some more details like these ones, because I really enjoy them. So yeah, let's see what this area has to offer. Okay, I think I will leave this very cozy place for now. The thing with sketching in the field is that I like to keep moving. I can't sit for very long, and I think I've been here maybe 40 or 50 minutes. I haven't checked, but I'm starting to get antsy a little bit, and so usually what I do is I will do very rough sketches and color tests, and sometimes even a full colored sketch like the one I showed you, but I rather like to move around when I'm out in nature. But I guess it's also nice to have this time when you just sit down and get lost in one detail in one place or in one flower like I did here. So yeah, I think I will get up, pack my things and move around a bit and see what else I can find that might be of interest here. So it's a few days later and I've taken a look again at my sketches of the orchids, and I've realized that my current palette doesn't really accommodate the colors of the orchids really well. So I found the mixes to be a bit dull, and I've tested a few other pigments, and I've exchanged a few colors on my palette. So now I have a true orchid palette with a lot of these really intense and vibrant magentas and purples that you need for getting these really vivid colors for the flowers. And yeah, I will show them and do some swatches later on, and talk about all of the pigments that I changed. And another thing that I would like to try out is how to work more with ink and inked outlines. And yeah, usually I only do pencil outlines, but I thought it might be a nice change. And yeah, this is something that I could even introduce to my field work. I do have these fountain pens that take waterproof ink. And waterproof ink is important because I do apply the ink first and then layer watercolor over it. So it's important the ink is waterproof so it doesn't bleed when you add watercolor. And this is something that I want to experiment with a little bit, and yeah, this is going to be the second part of this video. I hope you enjoy it. So I know this will come up. This small container that I'm using here is called a dinky dip, and basically these are small ink containers that you can fill with whatever ink you like. They're mostly available from online suppliers for calligraphy. So I guess you can get them also on Etsy maybe. Anyway, they're really practical and they prevent you from knocking over inks in these really big bottles. And yeah, they're very practical tools. The nibs that I'm using here, the one that you just saw was a Tashikawa Maru T77. It's a very fine drawing nib that I enjoy for details. And the one you see right now is a Brause Cito Fine, which has a bit more of a broader nib. So not really broad, but it's also a great drawing nib. And yeah, I'm applying watercolor over the ink. So my ink is waterproof, it dries waterproof, and this is Rohrer & Klingner sketch ink. And it comes in a few different colors, and you can also mix it. So the ink that I used here is a mix of I think this reddish one is actually, they have this dark red one, and I've mixed in a little bit of brown, I think. So the sepia tone. Also the greens that I'm adding here, and this is also sort of a new approach for me, they are all based on cobalt blue with various amounts of lemon yellow and pure yellow. So I found you can get, and this is probably not new for anyone who's done botanical illustration, you can get much nicer greens if you just mix them from blue and yellow than if you use these kind of convenience greens. And of course you can also use diluted watercolor pigment in these small ink containers and then draw with them. So this is just a little bit of quinacridone pink, which I have mixed so that I can draw these really fine lines with it. And I found this is easier than applying it with a brush onto the nib over and over again. So this just basically saves me a little bit of time. And as you can see, this nib is really gives you nice, crisp and fine lines. I really love these Japanese nibs. They're usually used, I think, for manga drawing, but you can, of course, use them for any kind of drawing. And if you want to explore this, you don't have to get terribly many nibs in the beginning. Just get a few different ones and see which ones you like, and if you like them at all. So as usual, I brought this small palette with me, which I usually have with me on these field sketching outings. And I noticed when I was sketching in the field that the color mixes that I got were not as vibrant as I would have liked them. So I did a few tests on over here, and you will notice that especially these are very, very dark. And so these were mixes of quinacridone pink and dioxazine violet and different blues, and I wasn't really loving how these colors turned out on these particular orchids. So I looked around in my palettes at home, and I actually exchanged a few colors on my palettes. So I now have these additional pigments for this particular type of work here for these species. So a lot of these wild orchids have a lot of purple and magenta tones in them. So I added these pigments. This is quinacridone magenta, quinacridone violet, and perylene violet. And so with these very intense pinks and purples, I can get a larger range of vibrant colors for these particular plants. The perylene violet is maybe the one of these that I wouldn't have needed strictly, but I had it, and I'm always happy if I'm out in the field and I don't have to mix. This is also due to the fact that usually when I'm in the field, I don't bring these really large water buckets with me. I usually have water containers that are maximum size is this. And what I don't like to do is just to exchange it out in the field, particularly when I'm in a very sensitive area that is nature area that is protected, then I don't want to be exchanging my paint water in the middle of nature. So I usually bring several of these small containers or even smaller containers, and then if you have to change the colors on your brush a lot or have to mix a lot, then this will be not so great for the paint water because it will get muddy soon. Yeah, so these were the things that I recently changed in my palette. I hope I will be sketching many more orchids this year, this summer. So let's see what other changes this experiment will bring.